I don't know how to say this without sounding like a bit of a dick, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm going to try to say this nicely, but the customer is kind of an idiot. I really do mean it. I'm not trying to be mean here. It's just that it's not really the customer's job to know what the answer is to their problem. And yet, as marketers, we often find that we are talking about the customer's needs and give the customer what they need and think about their pain, look at their problem, and create a product to solve a problem, to scratch an itch, etc., etc. And this is not necessarily always the correct approach. I think in most cases, I've always maintained that you should offer the customer what they want, like attract them, reel them in with what they want, and then sell them what they need. Because in the end, it's not really, that's not what they come to you for. Even though they tell themselves that this is why you exist as a business, to serve their wants, their desires, right? So you got, I know in the previous video we talked about how somebody might search for how to lose weight. So rather than search for ways to lose weight, what's the best way to lose weight or something like that, they're going to go ahead and search for, they're going to bias the responses by saying diet program, or what is the best diet to lose weight, or such and such ketogenic diet, because they've already figured in their mind what they need is the ketogenic diet, and they are now looking for that solution. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are not open to other alternatives. Sometimes they are closed off and they really think that this is it, this is the only thing, and it's going to be your job to show them why they are wrong about that and why the correct answer is something else. So I've got a few stories to tell you to kind of help to illustrate this. So one of the first story I want to share with you is how when I sell in my market, most people are after, when they come to me at least, they come to me because they want traffic. They come to me because I'm the Google Ads guy. And I have in the past offered products about traffic where people would come. So I had a service, for instance, called the Done For You Traffic service. And so I would get on the phone with people to figure out things for them so that I can, then go and build out a traffic campaign for them. And what would surprise you possibly is that most of the people who paid $2,000 for the service would actually get on the phone with me, and then we would realize they don't even have a website. They don't have a website. So what do you want to get traffic to exactly when you don't have a site? They don't have a product. Many of them haven't settled on a business that they want to promote or product that they want to promote. They've got nothing. And they paid $2,000 at this point to get a traffic campaign built. I don't know what I'm supposed to build that traffic campaign for. Okay? So this is a classic example of the customer being an idiot. The customer doesn't know the answer. And dude, I gotta tell you, I'm not talking about, people who are low in the IQ department. I'm talking about sometimes some really intelligent, smart, savvy business people who are successful. They come to me as clients sometimes, right? And they come and they say, and they tell me, do this, do that. And I'm supposed to, being the basically the contractor, the advisor, the consultant, I'm supposed to do what the customer wants. But dude, quite often the customer is wrong. I can't tell you how many people come to me and they say, oh, such and such is working for me on Facebook. This offer is working for me on Facebook. I just want to get on Google. And so they think Facebook, Google, same thing. The offer is working on Facebook. I just want to run a Google campaign. You're the guy who knows about Google. Make it work on Google. And I go, okay, well, let's take a look. Oh, this is a long form sales letter. In my experience, I've tried all sorts of methods to make long form sales letters work on Google, and they can work, but they generally are not profitable on Google. The cost is too high, and it just doesn't seem to convert anywhere near as well. I don't know what it is that you do on Facebook. I don't know. Maybe, just maybe, I'm a really shit advertiser on Google, for all I know. Okay. Maybe there's some guys out there who run long form sales letters and they're making a killing. I'm not one of them. I've tried every kind of trick under the sun, and I've had some limited success with it. And most of the clients I've had to date have not been able to maintain the cost of those ads against the actual revenue that they generate from the ads. They just don't have enough money being made back from from a sale to be able to cover the cost of running long form sales letters. And sorry, but you're an idiot to be selling a $5 product, a $10 product, a $30 product, even a $40 product with a long form sales letter. That's just a stupid idea. It doesn't make any sense. You don't need this long ass sales letter to sell a product that costs so little. Just give people the highlights. It's just common sense. Anyway, so okay, I went on a little bit of a rant there, but the point being that the customer doesn't really know what they want. Doesn't really know what they need. It's my job to communicate, to convey to them what they need. What you need is to run a different kind of a landing page to be able to turn the traffic into buyers and to be able to make money. Ultimately, what you're looking for is to make more money from Google, right? Yeah, so this is what you need to do. Don't come and tell me. It's not your job to come and tell me how that should be done. You've hired me to do that, to tell you. Well, it's the same thing with your products. Quite often you find that if you were to sell to people what they want, people will jump on board. They'll take it, but they'll get very little value out of it. It is your job to tell them what they actually need if you're a responsible seller. Now, if you take a look at many of the businesses that exist today, that are very, very successful businesses, they actually did not serve a need at all when they came out. People weren't asking for this thing. And yet somebody had figured out that this might actually interest people. So, for instance, if you take a look at the computer industry, for instance, we had IBM used to, and computers for the most part were mainframes. They were large machines that lived inside entire rooms, like big giant rooms inside an office building. Okay. IBM stands for International Business Machines because that's what they were. They were business machines. And so your normal, typical, average person had no use for a computer at all. Nobody was sitting there thinking, you know what I need in my house, on my desk, in my living room, whatever, is a computer. Nobody was sitting there thinking that at all. There was nobody with an itch that needed to be scratched about something called a computer. Along came these guys like Steve Wozniak, like Wozniak and Bill Gates and co, right? And there was this new thing that had come out. It wasn't a new thing, but it was like the latest in technology. I think it was Casio. They released a calculator, a programmable calculator that was, top of the line sort of a thing. And these guys were excited because they could take this and they hacked it and they turned it into basically a programmable, like they opened it up so that it was a programmable sort of a computer that was portable, that was small. They could actually carry it around with them. And so all of a sudden, these guys started thinking, hey, what would be cool is if we turned these and if we made personal computers a thing. And IBM and the likes of IBM couldn't see it. They're like, what's a regular person going to do with a computer? You crazies. What are they going to do with a computer? Because all they could see was a computer solved business problems. It was only required in the business context, and it was a huge thing. Who's going to put that in their house? And it required programming. Who's going to learn programming? Even these guys they were hobbyists, and they didn't really think that people, initially, they weren't really thinking outside of programming. But sure enough, when they came out with the personal computer, the first prototypes of the personal computer, these things were flying off the shelves. They started to sell like crazy. Like, holy crap, there's some interest here. So then they started to imagine all the various things that you could possibly do with a computer. And sure enough, and I think, one of the early things that they did was they tried to sell it as a kit. So you would take this, you would put it together yourself at home. And they were selling essentially to other engineering types, other people who like to, fiddle, hobbyists, people who like to fiddle with electronics and play with, do things with their hands and so on. And then it was like they had the breakthrough where it was like, oh, what if we put these together and sold them ready-made? And then I was like, holy crap. And pretty soon they were thinking of them in terms of consumers. Think about the iPod. Nobody was sitting there going, hey, I need, what would be really nice is a device that I can hold in my hand that will carry all of my music. Nobody was sitting there thinking that. And yet when it turned up, people were, hey, that's kind of nice to have. Think of the iPhone. Think of the smartphone. By the way, there were people before the iPhone, there were people who were taking the iPod and hacking it and basically jailbreaking it so that you could run a Linux operating system on the thing. And I was like, I remember somebody sharing that with me, and I was like, actually my supervisor in university, I was like, okay, cool, but like I don't understand what the use of that is. I didn't even understand what somebody would want to do that for. I mean, it was cool, no doubt about it, that you could have this tiny little computer in your pocket. But that was about as far as I thought of it. And sure enough, they made the iPhone, and nobody was sitting there thinking, I need this. But it took off when it was released. If you look at like Facebook, you look at YouTube, again, these are businesses that exist today that people adopted very rapidly, but nobody was sitting there thinking, what people need is this. Well, it's the same thing with me. A few years ago, I have a network marketing, internet marketing crowd as my subscribers for the most part. Okay. So these guys are sitting there asking questions about how can I get more traffic? How can I get more conversions? How can I get more people to my site? How can I make more money? How can I make sales, etc., etc.? These are the sort of questions they're asking. And by addressing those questions and giving people some of what they want, you can run a stock standard, regular average business in that industry. And possibly, if you are creative enough, you might carve out, if you're smart enough and skilled enough, you might be able to carve yourself out a little niche where you could create that. Well, Ben Settle came around back in the day, for instance, and he said, hey, what would be cool is to become an email marketing specialist. And he created a niche that did not exist up until that point. There was no such thing as an email marketing specialist. I was in his private Facebook group. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry in there was suddenly an email specialist. So it's not like, he created a market out of thin air. There was nobody saying, I need an email specialist to work for me, to, write my emails. People used to say, I need a writer. Now they're saying, I need an email specialist. Well, it was similar for me. One day I built a mobile app, and I was like, what would be kind of cool is to see if anybody would be, like, that was easy enough. It would be kind of cool to see if people would be interested in learning how to do that on my list. So I wrote an email. I didn't even bother to write a proper sales page for it because I thought it was kind of a stab in the dark. Perhaps it'll work, perhaps it won't. I took it seriously enough to write a decent series of emails, but I didn't really take it so seriously as to sit down and write a proper sales presentation for it. It was just like a simple one-pager and then a link to the order form. And I promoted it to my list, and I won't tell you it was like a remarkable, stellar success by any means. I wouldn't have called it a huge success. But there was a surprising amount of interest in this very technical thing that I was offering. Very technical topic. It's basically computer programming in the Flex language, which, was incredible. And I thought, hey, you know what? I'm onto something here. And so I did an HTML class. And more recently, you saw me doing the cloud computing thing. If I came to my subscribers at some point, I wrote them an email, and I did a survey. I was like, hey guys, you know what? I'd like to ask your opinion. What would you like to learn about? Ask me whatever. I can, help you in all kinds of topics. Nobody was going to go, hey, Jim, you're really technical. Perhaps you can show me how to set up a cloud computing infrastructure for my website. Nobody was going to say, hey, can you show me how to, how to build a landing page using Elementor? Nobody was going to say, hey, can you show me how to send emails out of my WordPress website without them landing in spam? Nobody was going to ask me those things, although people do wonder those things, but nobody in my market was going to ask me this. Okay, so when I went ahead and I shared this topic with people, let me just give you a little bit more background on it. I had spent basically cloud computing is not the simplest subject matter by any means whatsoever, okay? It's a very complex topic. To the extent that I have, like the other week, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who is a senior developer in a large company which does contracts for the government, and he's been, basically programming for a living for a very long time. And I said to him, I just finished writing a book. He goes, about what? I said, cloud infrastructure. And he's like, isn't that just like applications in the cloud? He obviously he was oversimplifying because he didn't really understand what it was. Basically, he thinks of of cloud infrastructure as basically just a kind of hosting. It just happens to be on Amazon's big servers or Google's big servers or Azure or whatever, Microsoft's servers. And that's what he was basically asking. Now, he's not the only one out there. There's a lot of programmers, a lot of technical people who don't actually understand cloud tech. A few years ago, I hired a software development firm to build for me a large application, a very big application that included a mobile component and a back office, like a web-based back office. And part of the discussion, and at the time I didn't know that much about cloud tech either, but I assumed that these guys are experts, they'll know all about it. And I said to them, it's got to be fast. It's got to be able to handle it to scale and handle millions of users, and it should be able to, do this really, really well. And I said, yeah, we'll put it on the cloud for you. We'll put it on Amazon and everything. I was like, okay, cool. So we finalized the project. It was all good. All right, let's put it up. And they built it. Of course, they built it, all of it offline on their own servers, and they didn't. This should have been a red flag number one if I actually knew what I was doing. If I knew anything about cloud computing at the time. And by the way, I have a lot of programming background. I started programming at 9. I'm nearly 40 today, so there's plenty of background for me in programming. And yet, I didn't realize that this was an issue. The fact that they didn't build the application on the cloud, they built it locally, was a problem. They didn't build it for a specific cloud. That was a problem. That would have been a red flag. Anyway, so what they did was, we said, okay, so I said to them, all right, the application is ready, fine, put it up on the cloud, And they went, we signed up for an AWS account, and they basically allocated a dedicated server, which is so, oh my God, so ridiculously stupid. Okay, you do not, that is not how it works. You go and get a dedicated server on GoDaddy. Okay, you pay $80 a month. Our bill for that month, I think, and we didn't have any traffic, exceeded, if I remember correctly, it was over $5,000 or $8,000. I forget what the number was. It was some ridiculous number. Okay, and the application was slow as shit. You know why? Because they didn't treat it as a cloud computing environment at all. They took the web application, they took the back end, they took the front end, they took the SQL database, they did everything, and they stuck it onto the same machine. Okay, which is what you would do if you paid $80 a month to HostGator or GoDaddy to have a dedicated server, and then you would put all that stuff on there. Okay, so there was no scalability in this thing. There's none of that stuff that we talked about was not part of it at all. So that is how complex that material is. To further illustrate, about a year ago, I sat down and I needed to solve some of these problems for myself. And I'd been developing this application for some time, and I'd been developing it in the cloud using the cloud technology. So it's not like I wasn't, but I had to figure out the scaling part. I knew that it was possible. I just didn't know exactly how I was going to pull it off. And I started to read a bunch of tutorials, and I was going through them, and I was banging my head against the wall, trying to figure this thing out. And then eventually I was like, you know what? I can't understand this stuff. It's just so above my head that I cannot get it. And I hired two people who went in and actually started to build this thing for me. And little by little, I started to learn what it is that they were doing as they were doing it. And they couldn't solve my problem either. I'm the one who solved my own problem, and I gave them the solution. They couldn't, they were supposed to be the experts on the cloud tech, and I still ended up being the one who solved my own problem. Of course, I can't tell you I'd have solved it without their help, because they had given me the base that I needed, that I wasn't able to get out of the tutorials. They translated those tutorials, that theory, into basically, here's how it would be done for your case, for your use case. And so now I understood what to do. I was able to figure out and solve my problem. Anyway, I went ahead and built this thing. Got this thing working. And when I finished it, I was like, you know what? Other people could actually, in my market, could actually learn something from this. I could actually teach this to people. And that's what I did. I created the Business Command Center, in which I taught people how to put together the same infrastructure that I have running my site, that is infinitely scaling, that can send millions of emails a month rapidly, and can do everything that you are doing inside of ClickFunnels or whatever. But ask anybody on my list, is this something that you want to learn? Most people would have told you, is this something you want to learn? If you ask them, what would you like to learn? Nobody would have said this. Nobody would have said, that my pain right now is that I am paying a lot of money to all these service providers. I wonder if there's a way where I don't have to do that. My pain and frustration right now is that ClickFunnels is a piece of shit. It's a crappy application that doesn't really work, and their support is rubbish. And I don't like my data being held onto by other people. Nobody's going to tell me that. And yet, when I released it, there was an overwhelming response where people jumped on board and they loved it. Okay? They jumped on board and they embraced this. It's like, yeah, this is cool. I want to have that power. And you know what? People would have said to me before, what's somebody going to do with all that power? Most of the people on your list are small time. Most of them don't even have a list. Most of them have really tiny lists. Most of them have small businesses that don't actually need all of this power. They're not thinking about scale. They're not thinking about growing their business and how they're going to handle large spikes in traffic, because that stuff's not likely to happen to them anytime soon. And they figure they'll just cross that bridge when they get there. But guess what? When I put that out there, people were like, this is cool. I want to have that power. Why the hell not? And they jumped on board. And I was like, okay, well, let's... And dude, what's amazing is that now I'm seeing what they have done, and they've actually implemented this really complex stuff, right? That neither I, nor the people I hired, nor my friends, nor anybody who is very, very technical was able to do. And these guys were able to do it. And guess what the service is that I'm providing here? I'm the only guy who's actually provided that information in a format, in a way that non-technical people can actually implement it. Because I tell you what, if you went and searched online, you'll find plenty of tutorials on how to do this, but not one of them is designed for somebody who has no technical background, very little technical experience, no programming, no system administration experience at all. All of them are written for people who are basically technical like me and probably beyond my level. And yet, here we have non-technical people doing this amazing, they're setting up these amazing technical, very tech-heavy solutions on their websites. And they are in a position to take on as much traffic as they want. They're able to send emails to millions of people if they want, if they ever need to. And they're doing this all for way cheaper than they were ever spending, than anything else that they would have done before. All of this because I assume that the customer is an idiot. That's no disrespect to the customer, of course. But I assume that the customer doesn't know, and I have to tell the customer what they need. I have to tell them. It's my job to inspire them, to show them what the solutions are, what solutions are out there, what kind of things you can do. Hell, did you know you can run your own webinar server? Is that something that most people just know? Do you know how easy it is to run your own webinar server? How many times have you, for instance, I just ask because this is a solution that I solved for myself recently, okay? How many people out there are sitting on, they want to run a webinar and they only do like one webinar every, blue moon. It's not like even a monthly webinar. They do a webinar once in a blue moon, but it has to be a webinar because there is a difference between a webinar and a meeting, by the way. So, your free Zoom account is not going to cut it. Even your paid Zoom account, I'm sorry about this vibrating here. It's just driving me nuts. Sorry, I had to shut it down. There's this, the fact that you can actually, and all the webinar services are selling their service. It's quite expensive for a monthly fee, and you have to pay for it monthly so you can use it every blue moon. Well, I actually set up my own webinar server, and it's actually way easier than you might imagine. And I put this on the cloud, and it's something I intend to show people. But guess what? Nobody's sitting there saying, hey, how can I do that? But if you knew that you could do it, wouldn't that be cool? Guess what else I've got going on? I have, if you ever use Zapier, you'll understand much better, I guess. But basically, it's an automation system that allows you to set up, interfaces between different things. Maybe you want to, when you get a new order come through, you want to send an email to the fulfillment people, and you want to be able to, create an Excel spreadsheet where you put your orders, your new orders into, and maybe you want to get an SMS notification about it, perhaps, for instance. Or maybe you need to, create an account, like an account in some membership software, as well as send out an email to the user and so on. So Zapier allows you to create an automation where you would go and do all of those things using a very simple drag and drop sort of interface. You'd be able to create, basically talking through their APIs, have all of these different bits of machinery talking to each other. And that's a service that is paid and costs, its payment, the payment for it is actually quite stingy. I don't like their payment plan. It's like constantly upselling you to spend more and more and more on a monthly basis. It is a useful service. There's no denying that. But that's another server that I have put together. I have that built and set up, and it's taking care of some of my automations for me. And that's something I can show you how to do. But again, you're probably not asking this question. So these are just some of the things. So do keep that in mind. Without being offensive at all, the customer doesn't know what it is that they need. It's your job to tell them what they need. It's your job to give them inspiration about what is available out there, what kind of things they could do, what kind of solutions you could give them on various topics, and to give them to them. All right? So let me know what you think, and until the next video, bye.